Hey guys, welcome back to some more AFK Arena. So one of the questions that I get a lot of times is what should we prioritize when it comes to stargazing? So I'm going to run through the heroes. It has changed quite a bit over time just because we've had more heroes introduced to the store, which we'll look at in just a moment. But ultimately, as the metas change, as a lot of the formations change, the stargazing priorities have changed. Now, this is my personal preference. This is really how I build my accounts and how I do my stargazing priority. So the first thing we're going to look at is the shop. So the store has actually changed a while ago. In here, we do have Wukong, which is in here. We have Arthur as well, but he is a dimensional. But ultimately in the Challenger store, we have added Orthos and we have added Zolrath in here. Now, looking at Thalia used to always be the very, very first priority. She was the hero you wanted to build first. Since the introduction of Cecilia, a lot of players haven't chose to build Thalia because there are other priorities when it comes to the store, which is Aziz. Aziz is a hero you're actually going to want to take all the way up to Ascend. He is that good in formations and comps in a lot of different places. He has the ability to lock out ults, and he has a mana battery, and he does a attack rating debuff. Very, very powerful. Now looking at Orthos, Orthos has actually kind of taken a backseat to Alna. Alna is kind of a haste slowing immunity tank. So even though Orthos is still very, very powerful, Alna has actually taken the priority when it comes to the stargazing away from him. And then Zolrath as well. Zolrath is actually a little bit further down the priority list, especially because now that you can buy them, guys. So essentially when you get enough challenger tokens, you can purchase them out of the shop. You don't have to waste 60, 70 pulls on average to go ahead and pull one single copy of them. You can just wait and build them in the shop, again, lowering the priority a little bit on the Stargazer overall. And as well as Flora. Flora is one of the relatively cheap heroes that we have down here in the Celestials. So ultimately, she needs a team built around her. So not really a very big priority on building Flora. She will come with time. She will come with the tokens. Ultimately, not stargazing for her. So that brings us to who should we stargaze for. First priority that I always have, guys, is the twins. Big reason is the Celestial Twins bring a haste with their ultimate ability. Super, super powerful. And if you look at team comps, if you look at campaign team comps, they're utilized. If you look at Twisted Realm, they're utilized. If you look at AE, they're utilized. Even when you look at the new events that are coming up, a lot of the Voyage of Wonders event, a lot of the Abyssal Expedition, the mini AE, the twins are utilized for everything, guys. There is not a single hero in AFK Arena that brings more utility than the twins because of what they can do and what they can do in team comps. Building them up to Mythic. Again, only going to Mythic at the beginning is really, really the priority. The reason for the priority is because of the signature item. So essentially, as you build Grez, as you build Saurus, as you build heroes like Isolde, for the Twisted Realm bosses, the Twisted Realm bosses in return are going to do more and more damage. If you don't have the twins at minimum Mythic with a plus 20 signature item, they're going to die very, very fast. Essentially, when a battle is a minute and a half long, you don't want the twins to die out in 30 seconds of the battle, not allowing them to do any haste or any buffs for pretty much the remainder of the fight because they die out too quick. That is the big priority why I build them up to Mythic. Mythic is where I stop initially, especially if you are free to play. If you're pay to win, you know what, go ahead and buy them to wherever you want. But essentially getting them up to that Mythic level first with that signature item will make them very, very powerful. Second hero that we always stargazed for was always Tayleen. As again, the metas changes, the team comps change, I would actually prioritize putting Lucretia next. Reason is Tayleen is support for a team. Tayleen can help a team. She is in the God tier comp. Lucy can do everything by herself. So as we've seen from a lot of the pushes in chapter 34 and chapter 35, Lucretia can actually destroy the teams herself. We've even put 3 level 1 heroes in the back row with the buffs that she gets with her furniture and her signature item. She has enough to go through campaign stages by herself. We've seen her perform absolutely amazing in the mini Abyssal Expedition, the Hunting Grounds. We've seen her in the Abyssal Expedition, soloing teams by herself. Super, super powerful. The really big reason why she is the priority coming in at the number 2 slot. So my number 3 slot is going to be Alna. Big reason with Alna is her tanking ability is very, very strong. She has a haste debuff, which again is very strong. Her 9 of 9 furniture is absolutely amazing. So she can actually offer immunity to herself and to another hero, giving them time to scale, giving them time to live, and actually beating out the battles. In addition, with the haste reduction, this is the reason why Alna has sort of replaced Orthos, is with the haste reduction she brings what Orthos does, just at a much, much higher level with what she brings. Signature item is very strong as well, because again, she gets the immunity, which is very, very strong. Orthos will die, try to heal himself. He has the time stop, but ultimately Alna is the one to build next in the third slot when you're looking at the priorities of the Stargazer. Next one we look at is Tayleen. Tayleen, number 4. She is still a very, very big priority just because of her utility. You can put her into most teams. She will perform very well. She will heal the team. She will do a ton of damage. If she happens to die, especially if she dies early in a match, she is reborn. She comes back with more attack. She comes back with more defense. So she actually gets stronger and she does a ton of damage. So even though she is a support class, she does do a ton of damage when it comes to the heroes and the damage they will put out. So she comes in at number 4. Number 5 is kind of a little bit of a different one, but I would actually put Mortis in here only to Elite Plus. The really big thing with Mortis is he doesn't need his signature item. He doesn't need his furniture to be built to really perform well. If he enters a battle 5 versus 5, he will buff the 4 other heroes. At that point, if he dies, no loss. You just want Mortis's buff from his ultimate ability to actually go off with the empowerment, giving a big, big buff. Right there, allies are granted 40% of the attack's rating and 40 attack speed. Again, you want him to buff even at Elite Plus. For a lot of formations, he will go ahead and buff the other 4 heroes. And then if he dies, he dies. It doesn't make a difference. But ultimately, if you do not have him at Elite Plus, you cannot run Mortis in the Abyssal Expedition, therefore maximizing all of the damage that your heroes are doing, because that is a massive buff that he brings. And the good thing about him, again, is he does not have to be built. You don't need the furniture. You don't need the signature items on him. Next one that I would prioritize on focusing is Zaphriel. So Zaphriel is kind of a late game, end game hero. He is very, very solid in PvP. He can stun. He works really well with Joker because remember, he does have a lot of stuns, has a lot of crowd control himself. So him and Joker together can trigger Joker's ability quite a few times, which is very, very powerful to see. He does take a significant investment, just like Alna, just like Lucretia. They do take a significant amount of investment with the signature items and with the furniture to ultimately be very, very effective. So after Zaphriel, I would honestly go back to the Hypogeans and I would go with Kazard. Kazard is another hero that works very well with Joker, again, for the crowd control aspect. He has several forms of crowd control. He does a ton of damage. So ultimately, after building Zaphriel, I would probably swap to Kazard. That way you can bring all of the crowd control that he has. In addition, with, again, running him with Joker, very, very powerful. Kazard, similar to other Celestials and Hypogeans, does require a solid investment as well. Which brings us, of course, to the big guy, Mizoth. Mizoth is very, very strong. He is a solid tank. He has his own crowd control. His survivability is very, very high. But we have a lot of tanks that fill a similar slot. When you look at Scrag, very high utility, easier to build. When you look at Arthur, most players have Arthur. You can get him from the Dimensional Stones. You can get him in the Arcane Labyrinth. Ultimately, there's a lot of tanks that are much, much easier to build, even though I would say Mizoth is probably on par, if not a little bit better. Mizoth is a super high investment to build just because of him being straight from the Stargazer and being only that way to get him. So some of the other heroes after him, I would probably go with Mahira. Mahira, again, a lot of players, a lot of team comps have gotten away from Mahira, even in the God tier comp. A lot of them have started using different formations. A lot of people will use Tassie instead of Mahira. There's been a lot of adjustments where Mahira is not really the big priority in the God tier comp. She will work well, don't get me wrong. Having her built, having her decked out, she will do well. But ultimately, there are so many other Celestials and Hypogean heroes that take priority versus her. Now, we've already been playing this game for a year. Even looking a year ago, a lot of those, we didn't have Lucy, we didn't have Zaphriel, we didn't have Alna. We were missing a lot of the heroes that we have now that we already have built. So essentially, the other heroes in here, again, prioritizing out of the shop. Number one out of the shop is, of course, Aziz. He is going to be the very big priority when you're building them out of the shop. And I would follow him with Zorath. So Zorath or Orthos, either one, really depending on your preference, because if you're building Alna, which is really good at tanking, depending on the combinations you're building, Zorath and Orthos kind of either or. I know Zorath is really strong in PvP, where Orthos kind of does okay, but the issue that a lot of people have with Zorath is the survivability with him. And again, he does take a significant investment. But ultimately out of the shop, Aziz number one, Zorath or Orthos number two. Then I would personally probably go with Flora. Again, because Thalia, even though she is strong, she does take a considerable investment as well. But you can get a much cheaper version of her in Cecilia that is much easier to get. Now, Cecilia doesn't have the same output as a Thalia does, but ultimately does very well. So looking at some of the heroes that you are not going to Stargaze, again, Wukong is one you will definitely not Stargaze. You get a lot of copies of him. You'll get him out of the Arcane Labyrinth. He will come in time. He is one to not Stargaze for. Same with Flora. We built Flora without Stargazing. We built Wukong without Stargazing, just getting copies out of the shop to build them ultimately. Again, over time, Thalia, I probably wouldn't build out of the Stargazer unless you have a majority of the heroes built, or if you're buying her out of the Challenger token store, so you can actually buy her out of the store to supplement the copies. Even looking in the Hypogean space, most of the heroes in here are going to perform very well. So again, guys, I would build the twins to Mythic, would be my very first choice. Then I would go to Lucy. Lucy does require furniture and signature items to be maxed out. Then onto Alna. Then I would go to Tayleen. Mortis I would take to Ascended Plus to go ahead and get him unlocked. Then I would go with Zaphriel. And then after him, I would go back to Kazard, followed by Mizoth, the other heroes, picking them up all along the way. Because remember, guys, when you get the Celestials and Hypogeans, when you start doing these Stargazing, you want to have 12 to 15 Ascended heroes already before you start Stargazing. Everybody asks when you should. The reason for this is when it comes to the King's Tower, you start getting Stargazer cards at floor 125. If I start Stargazing early, and let's say I have 4 or 5 Ascended heroes, if I start using all of my diamonds to Stargaze, I'm not going to be able to push the faction towers in here to allow me to pick up more Stargazer cards. So essentially, in one hand, I'm spending more diamonds on Stargazing to forego getting Stargazer cards out of here naturally. That's why there's kind of a fine line between Stargazing too early or Stargazing too late. If you have 20, 25 Ascended heroes, yes, definitely time to start Stargazing, especially to pick up some of the key heroes like the twins, Lucy, Alna. Starting to pick those up and building team comps around them, because they will fill for a lot of teams as fillers. When you start getting into, the 2 teams, 3 teams, 4 teams, they will definitely be to a point that you're going to start having them as fillers within all of your teams. So guys, that will do it for the Stargazer. Right now, I am looking at Stargazing for Kazard. Kazard is a hero that I have never built. I have never seen. Same with Mizoth. So I actually changed up my formation just a little bit, not building Zaphriel before Kazard, because again, I wanted to see him. I have never seen him. Once he is done, we are going to go back to Zaphriel and we will continue Stargazing on there. So guys, let me know in the comments what you guys think. This is my preference on the Stargazer, the priority, how I really work it across all 8 of my accounts. So again, guys, let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.